rise, Judge Maximus.
You may be seated. Good evening, everyone. Please turn all your cell phones on airplane mode or completely off. If they are to go off, you may be charged with contempt of court. The prosecution will go first. Prosecution, are you ready for your opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Opposing counsel, members of the jury. Good afternoon. I am Colin Considine. It is my pleasure to be representing the state of Tennessee in this very important case. On the date of November 12th, the defendant, Ms. Stephanie Schultz, in an act of violence, struck the victim, Mr. Ryan Hill, over the head with a glass bottle, inflicting Mr. Hill with multiple lacerations to his cranium and its surrounding areas. We are confident that at the conclusion of this case, after you have weighed in all evidence of this important case, you will return a verdict of guilty. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Tennessee Code 39-13-102, within the confinements of these 7 numbers, lays an outline for the crime of aggravated assault. You will see exactly how the defendant checks off every last one of these boxes, those boxes being intentionally committing an assault, causing serious bodily injury, using and displaying a deadly weapon. Members of the jury, tonight the defense will claim that Ms. Schultz violently attacked Mr. Hill out of self-defense. However, I will also present to you with Tennessee State Code 39-11-611, the code for self-defense. Members of the jury, during this case, the state will clearly and concisely demonstrate exactly how the layout for the crime of aggravated assault is followed without any inconsistencies. The state will also prove to you with direct words from the law for self-defense exactly how this is not self-defense according to the law itself. Members of the jury, the prosecution will call 3 witnesses within this session. The victim, Mr. Ryan Hill, who was brutally assaulted by the defendant, Ms. Schultz. Deputy Powers, the arresting officer, who will testify with the backing of his years of law enforcement experience as to the factors surrounding the arrest, and Mr. Kingston Keelan, a student at Mr. Hill's workplace. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I am certain, beyond a reasonable doubt, that this was in fact a case of aggravated assault. I expect you to feel the same. Prosecution rests.
Defense, are you ready for your opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach the podium?
Proceed.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Greta Butler. I'm here today with my co-counsel, Mackenzie Bishop and Cameron Newman, to prove the innocence of my client, Ms. Stephanie Schultz. Today, I am here to justify the actions of my client. Title 39, Chapter 11 of Part 6 of the Tennessee State Code states that any person justified in threatening or using force against another when a person has reasonably believes that a force is immediately necessary to protect against the use of attempted or use of the unlawful force. I ask you to keep this in mind as we go through the next couple minutes and as we go through this case. Also, according to Title 39, Chapter 13, and Part 101 of the Tennessee State Code also states that aggravated assault is intentionally and knowingly committing an assault in which applies to seriously injuring or seriously committing bodily harm to another. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, when my client stepped into a bar on this afternoon of November 12th, I get a small glass of apple juice. She sat down at the bar and was trying to be friendly to Mr. Hill. Everything was going well when all of a sudden my client feared for her life. Feared for her life when a mere accident occurred. You see, Mr. Hill abruptly stood up and was clenching his fist and raised his elbow. This caused my client to have probable cause and reasonable belief to use self-defense. Not only is she a victim today, or that day, She was a victim. She was a victim from years ago of domestic abuse. My client was brutally beaten, bruised, scratched, and scarred from years of abuse that I am sure left a mark. It did as my final point, I will say that me and my co-counsel are trying to prove to you that Ms. Schultz was a victim and is innocent here today because she did not have the mens rea to understand the consequences of her actions. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor, we'd like to call Mr. Ryan Hill.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You may be seated.
Your Honor, may I approach? Good afternoon, sir. If you could please state and spell your name for the record.
Ryan Hill, RyanHill.
Okay. Mr. Hill, do you have a family?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Who all is included in that?
My wife and my 3 kids.
Okay. Do you ever get mad at your kids?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have daughters, sons?
2 daughters and 1 son.
All right. What are their names?
Callie's 5, Cooper's 3, and Jordy's 1.
Okay. When you get mad at them, how do you go about punishing them?
Depends on which one it is, because they're obviously different stages of development, but try to talk to them and figure out what's going on. Sometimes talking, sometimes timeout, just depends on the circumstances and what's happened.
Okay. Do you think that they still believe that you love them even when you're mad at them?
I hope they do, yeah.
Okay. Have you ever hit your son or daughter?
No.
What about your wife?
Nope.
Do you believe in any form of corporal punishment?
Nope.
How would you describe your overall relationship with you and your family, that being your wife and your kids?
I'd say it's a very loving relationship, and they love me, I love them.
Fair enough. Have you ever been in a physical altercation before with friends?
No.
Okay. What about with strangers?
No.
Mr. Hill, is it correct that on the night of November 12th, you were struck over the head with a bottle while minding your own business in a bar?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Could you tell me about that?
I was sitting up looking at the menu and just trying to figure out what I was going to order. Ms. Schultz came up, started talking nonstop. Then she ordered apple juice. When the bartender poured it in there, she knocked it over, got on me. I just stood up as a reaction. And next thing I knew, she hit me over the head with a bottle.
How'd that make you feel?
Didn't feel very good at that point. Getting hit over the head with that bottle and caused a lot of blood and cuts on my head, so I did not feel good at that point.
Now, who was it that spilled that apple juice on you and then hit you with the bottle?
I think it was Ms. Schultz.
You think it
she's
was
the
her?
one who knocked it. I'm not 100. I can't remember that exact thing. It was Ms. Schultz. Yes.
Okay. So can you confirm to me, was it you that were approached by the defendant, or did you approach the defendant?
I was already seated, and she came up and sat down, and yeah, she approached me.
Okay. Have you visited that establishment before?
Yeah, not often, but I have been there.
You have been there a few times. All right. Did you at any point raise your fist or show any form of aggression towards Ms. Schultz, apart
No.
from you standing up?
I just stood up really quick.
Just stood up really
The drink
quickly?
spilled on me and got on my pants.
Okay. You didn't raise your fist, nothing like that?
No.
Did you ball your hands at all?
I don't believe I did.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Defense, would you like to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor. What is going on there? Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Ryan Hill. So is it true, you said that on the night of November 12th, you came and sat down at the bar?
Yes.
Okay. And did you necessarily order anything before, such as a drink or food item?
I don't think I'd ordered anything yet. No.
Had you seen any other friends, family that day?
Yes, earlier in the day, but I was there by myself at the.
You said you had 3 children, is that right?
Yes.
Right, okay. And you said that you never raise your voice at your children, or do you?
I mean, I have raised my voice at my kids. Yes.
Do you consider that an act of aggression?
No.
Do you believe in calling someone names?
I mean, no, not normally, no.
At your workplace, do you ever raise your voice at some of your students or at your
Have
fellow
I raised my
teachers?
voice ever? Yes. Is it a common occurrence? No.
And could you have possibly seen anything or had anything happen to you earlier that day that could have made you mad?
No, not that day. I don't think so.
Could you tell me what you were doing that day?
Like when I was just sitting there, or what do you mean?
Yes.
I was there, I was looking over the menu trying to figure out what I was about to order, and then Ms. Schultz came up, started talking. She ordered apple juice, got it delivered, or got it brought to her, and then she spilled it and got on my pants.
Okay. You said it got on your pants. Is that correct?
Yes.
May I pull my bulletin board out, please?
Proceed.
Is what I wrote on the bulletin board what you said?
I believe so, yes.
And do you agree that you could have been friendlier to Miss Schultz?
I mean, she's a random person that just came up there. I answered her questions. I may have been short with her, but you don't have to talk to every single person that walks up to you.
Now, Miss Schultz, have you ever seen her or met her before?
No, not before that day, no.
And could it have gone down a different way, do you think?
Yeah, she didn't have to hit me over the head with a bottle.
Do you feel that raising your voice could have set her off in a way, could have triggered her in a way?
I mean, that's a question for her. That's not a question. She spilled a drink, and I just reacted like I would react whether it was a man, woman, whoever spilled a drink on me.
Do you feel it was possible that she could have reacted a different way as well?
Oh, yeah, she definitely could have.
Could you have reacted a different way?
I mean, I guess I could have just sat there and not done anything. That was an option.
Could you have been more polite?
I mean, I guess if I'd sat there and said nothing, that would have been more polite in the way I reacted, yes.
You talk about being polite. I'm not talking about being polite. I mean, when you could have stood up, could you have not raised your voice at her?
I guess, yeah, I just reacted. Like it was happened right then. Just frustrated. Like, I can't believe she just spilled that all over me.
And did anything happen again before this day that could have made you mad?
No. I don't think, no.
Are you absolutely sure?
Yes, I mean, unless there's some... Nothing happened that day that made me, like, on edge or anything going into when that incident occurred. No.
Is it absolutely possible?
Objection, Your Honor, repetitive. She's answered the question. Move along.
May I have a moment, Your Honor, to talk with my co-counsel?
Proceed.
I need help. And you said you didn't remember you balled your fist. Is that correct?
I think that's what I said, yes.
Your Honor, the defense would like to enter into evidence 5E.
Evidence 5E, so ended.
911. Nope. I got you. Nope. Wrong thing. There you go. What do you see wrong in this photo?
That she spilled the drink on me and I stood up after it got spilled all over me.
Okay. Could you look more carefully at your hand and your body language?
Okay.
Do you see that next to the glass, your hand is made in a fist?
It also looks like it's sitting on the top of the bar right there, and I was just raising myself up to stand up. So,
Could this have made her feel threatened, do you think?
I can't answer that because I'm not
Objection,
Ms.
that's an
Schultz.
opinion-based question, Your Honor.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Prosecution, would you like to redirect?
One moment, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, the prosecution would like to enter in evidence 3A.
Mr. Hill, what's your location?
Evidence 3A, so entered.
And along with that comes a unedited video. Keep going. Keep going. Yep. Nope. I don't know.
Mr. White?
The video.
You want the
The
video?
video.
Scroll down.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Scroll up. Scroll up.
I don't see it on
Sorry, I'm gonna have to.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is a subpoena for information from the video maker Rodney McKinnon. This subpoenas him for his photo video records of the phone that was used to take the video for the unedited video. Okay. Yep.
Hi, how are you doing? I really love your natural perfect place for that one. I mean, hi. Can I get a juice, please? Thank you so much. Your sport. Football, okay. Well, Tennessee Titans are okay. Of course, thank you so much. College football is a whole other ballpark. We have so many different teams going on. I don't understand.
Mr. Hill, let me ask you. You were the one who made this action of standing up, correct?
Yes.
So from your memory, is that a fist or is that you rising out of the chair and supporting yourself on the table?
It's me rising out of my chair and, I guess, supporting myself on the bar.
So you were in your chair and you rose up with your hand like that, correct? No further questions, Your Honor. Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to call Deputy Powers, the Wilson County Sheriff's Office, to be recognized.
Please raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. You may be seated.
Good afternoon. You could state and spell your name for me, please.
Deputy Kenneth Powers, Kennethewers.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Powers, I'm going to go a little back on your career here. Have you handled any aggravated assault versus self-defense sort of cases in your career?
Yes, there are a few.
Okay, what were those like?
There's a few cases involving some aggravated assault, similar to this case.
Okay. Similar how?
Involving some bar fights, glass bottles, kind of similar in the case we're talking about today. Fights, standing up, and similar to that.
Can you tell me about the crime of aggravated assault? Like, what is aggravated assault? What are the elements that make it up?
Well, aggravated assault is when someone commits an assault. In this case, the defendant hitting Mr. Hill with utilizing a weapon, like a bottle, making a bottle a weapon, and causes bodily injury and cause lacerations to Mr. Hill's head.
Okay. Can you tell me a little about proportional force in self-defense? Inform the jury, inform opposing counsel here as to what that means. Why is that required?
The law requires that in case of self-defense, the action of defense must be proportional with the threat. If it's not proportional, it can't be self-defense.
Okay. And in your professional law enforcement experience, is what the defendant here did with the bottle proportionate to what is claimed that Mr. Hill made a fist?
The proportional aggravated assault, it's not proportional to, it wouldn't be self-defense. It's grossly overreacted by the defendant.
Okay. And is that why you made the arrest?
It is.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Defense, would you like to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach the podium?
Proceed.
Officer Powers, could you tell me how long you have been on the police force?
I've been in law enforcement for almost 20 years.
And how, if you can remember exactly, how many cases of aggravated assault have you seen?
I couldn't give you an exact number, but I would say I've seen more than 50, maybe less than 100.
And how many self-defense cases have you seen in almost 20 years on the force?
2.
All right. And could it have been, and did you run a field sobriety test on Ms. Schultz or Mr. Hill? And do you have children?
2.
What are their ages?
She's 22.
Very nice. Did you join the force when your daughter was born?
Objection or relevance, Your Honor?
Overruled.
Yes, she was 3 years old when I joined.
And could you agree, actually no, sorry, Your Honor, let me rephrase that. Do you think, and you have a wife, right? Is that correct? Okay. And has your wife ever come across a situation like this?
Where someone's assaulted her?
No, where she's had to use self-defense.
No.
Have you ever come across where someone has assaulted her?
Assaulted her?
Yes.
No.
Have you ever had to say that she assaulted them?
No.
Okay. Your Honor, may I have a minute to discuss with my co-counsel?
Proceed. 1 minute.
Make it snappy. Do you want to ask what those two defense crimes were to see if they can yeah, if that works. Okay. Sheriff Powers. Is that correct? Or do you want me to say Officer Powers?
Officer Powers is fine.
Have you worked with anyone who has been assaulted, or do you know anyone who has been assaulted?
Yes, I've worked with domestic violence victims and I've worked with assault victims, aggravated assault victims.
And has Ms. Schultz ever called 911 or something or another legal service for help in any domestic violence?
To my knowledge.
Your Honor, the defense would like to enter into evidence 3F.
Three F so entered.
Oh, I don't have it. Oh.
Three F so entered.
What's the location of your emergency? Hi, can I order a pizza? The address, sure. The address is 229 Crosby Street. Ma'am, I think you have the wrong number. No, I definitely have the right number. Okay, ma'am. I think I understand what you were saying. Are you in any danger? Ask for pepperoni if you are. Pepperoni would be great. Okay, ma'am. How many people are in the apartment? Would a large pepperoni be enough for two of 2 children? Okay, ma'am. Ask for peppers if there is a way you can safely get out of the apartment. No, definitely no peppers. Is there a weapon anywhere in the apartment? Yes. I will have officers at your door in less than 4 minutes. Can you stay with me that long? I don't know. Oh, the number on the card? 459-668-7984. What's the name? The name on the card is Nicholas Tate. Ma'am? Oh my God, the police just got here. Thank you so much. You're very welcome. Please, if you are in any trouble, always call for help. I will. Thank you so much. Of course, it's my job. Bye. Bye.
So, after hearing this, the defense would also like to enter into evidence Exhibit 3C.
Exhibit 3C so entered.
Does this look like a injury that could have been sustained in a domestic abuse?
Yes, looks like she has a bruise around her left orbital socket.
And have you seen anything like this on the force that looks like this?
Yes.
Do you know the name Nicholas Tate?
Not.
And have you ever gotten into an argument with someone on the police force?
We've had a verbal disagreement, yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Prosecution, would you like to call another witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution would like to call Mr. Kingston Keelan, a student at Mr. Hill's workplace.
Please raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
May I approach, Your Honor? Good afternoon, sir. Could you state and spell your name for the record?
Kingston Keelan, Kingstonkeelan.
Thank you, Mr. Keelan. Let's start with some basic questions. How do you know Mr. Hill?
I'm gonna say that I'm Juliet, so it's kind of just like I'm around the acquaintance, knowing him.
And Mr. Hill works there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you think Mr. Hill's good at what he does?
I believe he is.
I believe he is. Have you ever witnessed Mr. Hill verbally abuse somebody, maybe physically abuse somebody?
No, Mr. Hill's always calm and collected.
Could you maybe describe to me his personality?
He's a very kind person, very calm and collected, like I said.
Okay. Have you ever maybe been in trouble with Mr. Hill?
Yeah, I have been in trouble.
You have been in trouble with Mr. Hill? All right, what was that like? What happened?
He gave me a school suspension.
Okay. And what was his demeanor when he responded to your actions, when he gave you that suspension, when he caught you doing what you were doing? Was he calm? Was he angry? Was he mean? Aggressive?
Calm. He always made me feel welcome and talked to, basically. I never really sad about my actions.
Okay. What do you think about the accusations that have been brought against Mr. Hill by the defendant? Do you think they're relevant? Do you think that's possible?
I think they're ridiculous. I know me and Mr. Hill would ever do anything like that.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Would you like to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach the podium? Hello, Mr. Keelan. How are you this afternoon?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. So you said you never had any problems with any of the admin here at Mount Juliet High School?
No, I have.
Okay. And what was that like?
It was just like a calm, collected conversation.
And have your parents ever raised their voice at you?
Yes.
Have you ever been grounded? What did you do to, did you ever have any problems with dress code?
No.
And did you know Mr. Hill or Miss Schultz? Did you know Mr. Hill before you moved to Mount Juliet High School?
No.
Okay. And did you know Miss Schultz before you moved to Mount Juliet High School?
No, ma'am.
And did you ever, when getting grounded, right? Because you said you've been grounded, right? Before, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
So you have been punished before.
Yes, ma'am.
And you said your parents would raise their voice at you.
Depends on the circumstance.
Have you ever been scared of your parents when they yell at you?
No.
Do you know that they love you, even though?
Yeah.
Okay. And could this have gone a different way? Do you believe this could have gone a different way?
Objection, Your Honor. That's an opinion-based question.
Sustained.
I apologize, Your Honor. Let me rephrase that. Have you ever had an encounter like this?
No, ma'am.
Have you ever had to use self-defense before?
Yes, ma'am.
And when using self-defense, were you scared?
No. I mean, I guess I was preferably just protecting myself.
Okay. And do you know Ms. Schultz?
No.
Okay. Your Honor, may I have a minute to talk with my co-counsel?
Proceed. 1 minute only.
Okay. You have 2 questions to ask. Why did he get in school suspension? And why wasn't he scared? You said you weren't scared, right? So why? Okay. Why did you get in school suspension, or ISS, as you like to call it?
I'm not too sure. I was in a school fight.
Was this school fight your self-defense? Mr. Keelan, did you start this fight?
No, ma'am.
And what was this fight over?
Objection, irrelevance.
Sustained.
And you mentioned a fight. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And using self-defense, were you involved with this fight?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you? Never mind.
Ms. Butler, please try to wrap it up. I'd like to keep this trial moving.
Of course, Your Honor. No further questions.
Prosecution, would you like to redirect? Your Honor, prosecuting us.
You may sit down.
That was like actually terrifying.
Defense, would you like to call your first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls witness number 1, Elena Black.
Please raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Could you state your name and spell it for the record, please?
Elena Black, ELENABLACK.
So could you tell us what went on this afternoon, Ms. Black?
I had just gotten off of a 24-hour shift at the hospital where I work as a nurse.
Right.
And I wanted to get some peace and quiet before I went to pick up my kids, so I went in the bar. And I had come in on Mr. Hill, and I see him get up, make his hands in a fist, and pull back his elbow. And I had just walked in the door, so I had no idea what was going on or the prior conversation beforehand. I called 911.
Yes.
And because before this, I saw Ms. Schultz grab a bottle and smash it over his head. And I called 911, and I walked over to help Ms. Schultz, and then I asked her if she was okay, and then proceeded to help Mr. Hill with his head.
And could you tell me why you asked Ms. Schultz first?
as a woman, I could see the fear in her eyes, and I have friends who have dealt with physical abuse cases, so I just knew that there was something going on and I needed to help her calm down.
Okay. And did you ask Miss Schultz what was going on to get her side of the story before you asked Mr. Hill?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what did she tell you?
She told me that she felt threatened and that her husband had before abused her and that she just didn't want to take any chances.
Of course. And as a nurse, I'm sure you see a lot of domestic abuse and domestic violence cases where women come in very injured from these places. Is that right?
Yes.
Of course. The defense would like to enter into evidence Exhibit 1A.
Exhibit 1A is so entered.
Thank you. And you said you're a mom. Could you tell us a little bit more about your children?
Yes, I have 2 girls. Their names are Carmen and Maddie.
Of course. And have you ever seen someone who has physically been assaulted or had to use self-defense?
Yes.
Okay. What did that look like?
It was one of my friends, and it was her partner at the time, and he had slapped her across the face.
Mm-hmm. And as you see behind you, is this something that would look like a result of a domestic abuse argument?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
Prosecution, would you like to cross-examine?
Direct examining is so much easier.
May I approach?
Proceed.
Miss Black, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You mentioned that you worked in a hospital, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then you said that after you were done at the hospital, after your 24-hour shift, yes?
Yes.
Okay. You went to the bar, correct?
Yes.
All right. Has you had anything to drink or eat at the bar?
No.
Okay. So can you describe to me what happened when you walked in?
I walked in the door and I saw Mr. Hill's hand in a fist, and he had pulled back, and then Miss Schultz smashed a bottle across his head.
Okay. So when you walked into the bar, you said that you saw Mr. Hill's hand in a fist, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was that fist on the bar? Was it in the air? Was it pointed at Miss Schultz?
It was on the bar counter.
It was on the bar. Okay. Is it possible that that could have been leaning up? He could have been leaning on it?
Yes, I'm sure that could be possible.
That could be possible. Okay. Your Honor, may I have a minute to discuss?
Proceed.
Thank you. Ms. Black, you mentioned that you had seen domestic cases before, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and when you looked at that photo, you stated that it was possibly domestic abuse, or it was?
Yes.
It was, or it was possibly?
It was possibly.
Okay. So in your professional nursing experience, you would say that that is what most domestic cases look like?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever seen anything with a glass bottle inflicting damage on someone?
Yes.
Okay, and what would your opinion be of what you saw happen to Mr. Hill? Would you say that could have...
Objection, an opinion-based question.
My apologies, Your Honor, I'll rephrase. When you walked in the bar, you went to, as the defense stated, you investigated and you took Ms. Schultz's side of the story. Why was that?
As a woman, I've seen domestic cases before, and it is often signs of abuse, and they can have post-traumatic stress disorder from that, and it can be very inflicting on their mental state.
Okay. So let me ask you, is Ms. Schultz had a previous history of domestic assault. In the medical world, which I'm not familiar with, but in the medical world, is it possible that that could have triggered this violence that Ms. Schultz demonstrated?
Yes.
It is possible?
Yes.
So you're saying that the previous domestic assault or domestic abuse that Ms. Schultz suffered could have triggered the violent act that she inflicted on Mr. Hill?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Defense, would you like to redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I walk around the courtroom to prove my point?
Proceed.
So, Miss Black, you said that you have seen glass bottles broken over the head. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And were those lacerations? Were they very deep in the head?
Yes.
Okay. And could you say, from your professional experience, that you had seen glass bottles and stuff like this broken over people's head before?
Yes.
Okay. And when asking Miss Schultz if she was okay, what did she tell you?
She told me that she was very scared and that she was having flashbacks to her past abuse.
Mm-hmm. And how did that make you feel?
I was very empathetic towards her because I understand how that may feel, and I was obviously quick to go to her side because it was the first thing I heard.
And have you personally ever experienced any kind of self-defense that you've had to use in a case like this?
No, ma'am.
Okay. So when asking Miss Schultz, could you say that she had, like, his eyes were full of rage?
Yes.
Okay. And you said she seemed very scared as well. As a mother, where were your children at the time of this?
They were at my mother's
Objection
house.
relevance.
And I apologize, Your Honor. If this was you, would you have been scared?
Yes.
So as a woman, you can say, not just from her what she was telling you, but what you would have felt if this had happened to you.
Objection, that's an opinion-based question, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Okay, whatever. I apologize, Your Honor. Let me rephrase that. Were you concerned about Ms. Schultz?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor. I tried really, really hard.
Defense, would you like to call another witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense would like to call witness number 2, Marissa Wood.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may be seated.
May I approach the podium? Could you please state your name, first and last name, and spell it for the record, please?
Marissa Wood, MARISSAWOOD.
Okay. And Ms. Wood, what is your professional experience with self-defense and domestic abuse?
I am a psychologist, so I specify in these types of cases. I see women, men, all types of people who have gone through traumatic events and all that.
Yes, of course. The defense would like to enter into evidence Exhibit 3R. Just spelling is bad. Grammar's bad. Grammar's bad. Guys, the grammar's bad, okay? Leave me alone. Guys, my grammar's bad, don't judge.
Exhibit 3R, so entered.
All right. Miss Wood, could you tell us what this is?
That is my diploma.
Okay. And what did you specialize in again?
Psychology.
Okay. The defense would also like to enter into evidence 9I, Exhibit 9I.
Exhibit 9I, so entered.
All right, Miss Wood. Did you ever, so you said you've seen cases like this?
Absolutely.
All right. And had anyone come in and been extremely scared when you first started working with them?
Yes.
And was Ms. Schultz exhibiting these factors?
Yes.
Okay. Defense would also like to enter into evidence Exhibit 7G.
Exhibit 7G, so entered.
All right, Ms. Wood. Could you also tell us what this is?
Yes, that is a mental examination of Miss Schultz's Miss Schultz's patterns after her abuse started.
Alrighty. The defense would also like to enter into evidence Exhibit H, 8J, or 8H, whatever.
Your Honor, may we approach the bench to discuss?
Proceed.
You got it wrong. Of course.
How is this evidence relevant to the case being that this has to do with her past history?
This is the actual mental assessment that she was given before and after the PTSD has set in and was taking place, and this domestic abuse was taking place.
Exhibit 8H, so entered.
All right. So you gave Ms. Schultz a mental assessment before and after she had went through this domestic abuse. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And could you tell us, in giving her this mental assessment, was she in the right mind, if you must say?
No, she was not.
And could you say that she had experienced a very traumatic event that could have caused her PTSD?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. And would you say, or no, and in your professional opinion, would you say that this PTSD that she has experienced would contribute to her mens rea in this case?
Absolutely.
Okay. And no further questions, Your Honor.
Would you like to cross-examine?
Yes, sir. May I approach?
Proceed.
All right, ma'am. The defense mentioned to you mens rea. Do you know what that is?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me?
Mens rea is the state of mind you are in when you commit a act.
Okay. So are you saying that it's possible that Ms. Schultz's prior domestic abuse could have contributed to why she did what she did on the night of November 12th?
Yes.
Okay. Is that backed up by science, or is that just an assumption?
That is backed up by science.
Okay, can you provide me with that information? Can you provide me with why, any science behind the fact that previous domestic abuse leads to current assault, current violence, anything like that?
Yes, previous domestic abuse causes PTSD, can cause PTSD in a victim, and it can definitely lead to future problems that they may have and cause different reactions.
Okay. So you're saying that Ms. Schultz possibly had PTSD, correct?
Yes,
Okay, is that diagnosed or undiagnosed?
that is undiagnosed.
Undiagnosed. So we have plenty of people in this world who live with PTSD and are still in the right mindset, correct?
Yes.
Have you met with any of those people?
Yes.
Any soldiers, anything like that? Okay, so do they live normal lives?
Yes, mostly.
Okay. So why is it that Ms. Schultz could have had this outburst that was caused by her previous domestic abuse and her undiagnosed PTSD, but all of these other people living with PTSD, such as our soldiers, our police officers, are just fine? Can you provide me with any information as to why that may be?
It all has to do with the person and how they comprehend things in their mind.
Okay, so you're saying that Ms. Schultz's situation is different, it's unique?
Yes, somewhat.
Okay. Your Honor, may I have a minute?
Proceed.
When did you start your treatment with Ms. Schultz?
I started about a year ago.
Okay. And when, from then to now, did you decide that Ms. Schultz was mentally unsound?
Let's say 3 months into our treatment.
Okay. And did that ever change to where Ms. Schultz was mentally sound?
No.
Okay. So you're saying that Ms. Schultz currently, to this day, is mentally unsound?
Yes.
Okay. Did she ever seek treatment for that apart from you?
I don't believe so.
Okay. Did she ever take any medications? Did you prescribe her anything? Did she visit any other providers that may have prescribed her anything?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Your Honor, may I have another moment?
2 minutes.
Now, you mentioned that Ms. Schultz never sought for treatment after you, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the world of, you were a psychiatrist?
Psychologist.
Psychologist, sorry. So in the world of psychology, is it not typical for someone who is declared mentally unsound by a psychologist to not seek further treatment? Do they just let out into the world so that they can do acts like this?
No.
Okay, so what's the typical scenario?
Typically, they may go to a doctor and get prescribed medication.
Okay, so you're telling me that with your psychological experience backed by your education from the University of Miami?
Yes.
Okay, so you're telling me that with the backing of that education, you let Ms. Schultz wander out into the world knowing that she was mentally unsound, which then led to this action upon Mr. Hill, correct?
I did not.
You did
I
not.
suggested it to her, but she did not act on that.
Okay, what exactly did you say to her that may have persuaded her to do such?
I suggested that she consult with her doctor about medication.
Okay, and she never did that, correct?
No.
Okay, so now we have this person who refused your medical advice, who you let out mentally unsound, or you suggest. My apologies, Your Honor. So we arrive here today where on the night of November 12th, where Ms. Schultz attacked Mr. Hill. And you're saying that that could have previously been brought upon by her previous domestic abuse, correct?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
We're going to take a brief recess. And we'll resume later.
Good job all the way through.
You'll have to.
We'll continue tomorrow.
Here we go.
Right into
It's gonna be
it.
so hard for the judges.
Morgan Cheryl.
Yeah.
You guys suck. Do we have to
Just
pay
saying.
tomorrow?
I
think we do.
Notes, put them in your binders.
I think we do.
Notes in your binders.
All rise, Judge Max presiding.
Welcome back, everyone. You may be seated. Please remember to silence all cell phones, turn them on airplane mode, or turn them completely off. We left off with the prosecution in their cross-examination. Prosecution, would you like to continue your cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may be seated.
Your Honor, may I approach? May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury, I'd like to thank you for reconvening today. With Your Honor, with your approval, I'd like to continue cross-examination.
Proceed.
Okay. Miss, what's your last name?
Wood.
Miss Wood. So if you recall yesterday, I asked you one simple question. Was it possible that Miss Schultz' past domestic abuse could lead to her now violent personality? And you answered?
Yes.
Okay. And you did declare her mentally unsound, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Was that using your psychological background?
Yes.
Okay. And you recommended she sought treatment, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did she take your advice?
No.
Okay. Ms. Wood, are you aware of Tennessee State Code 39-3206?
No.
Okay. So that is the duty to warn law. And that, from the law itself, states that a service recipient has communicated to a qualified mental health professional, being yourself, or behavioral analyst, that an actual threat of bodily harm against a clearly identified victim, and the professional, being you, using the reasonable skill and knowledge and care ordinarily possessed and exercised by the professional specialty under similar circumstances, has determined or reasonably should have determined that the service recipient has the apparent ability to commit such an act, being the assault on Mr. Hill, and is likely to carry out the threat unless prevented from doing so. The professional shall take reasonable care to predict, warn of, or take precautions to protect the identified victim from the service recipient's violent behavior. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yes.
Okay. So were you aware that it was your duty to conduct that?
Yes.
You were aware? Okay, so why didn't you?
I did whatever I can. I, as a psychologist, cannot prescribe medication to patients. I can do the best to help them get that medication, but that is all I can do.
Okay. So this isn't a prescription, or this is not the prescribing of medication. This is the notification to a law enforcement official, a government official, or a mental health hospital that your patient poses an immediate threat to the people around them if they do not seek help. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. So you made a conclusion based on your own opinion and psychological background that Ms. Schultz was mentally unsound, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So would you say that Ms. Schultz had a fear of men due to her personality or her past experiences?
Yes, somewhat.
Okay. So then can you answer me why Ms. Schultz may have approached a male and a stranger in an unfamiliar environment?
I cannot answer that because I am not Ms. Schultz.
Okay, fair enough. Are you aware of what the fight or flight response is?
Yes.
Okay, can you tell me about that?
Fight or flight is fight means like standing up to a situation and not running from it, being flight.
Okay. So when you watched the event unfold, was Mr. Hill's reaction a fight or a flight response?
I would say fight.
Okay. So now you're admitting that Mr. Hill, the reaction that he posed was purely psychological and it wasn't an act of violence? Is now what you're saying, because the fight or flight response, as you just stated, was a psychological response rather than an act of aggression. And now you're saying Mr. Hill's response was part of that. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if you knew that it was your duty to report to the police, government official, what it be, of Ms. Schultz's refusal of medication, why didn't you? Like you stated that you did everything you could, but is that really everything you did do? If you could have done that, why didn't you? I'm just looking for the answer. Why not?
I didn't see that she stood a threat, even though I know that she has this trauma it could lead her to. I didn't see at the time that she could possibly do something like this.
Okay. But the law states that if someone is declared mentally unsound, in which you did say that you declared her mentally unsound, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm still trying to find the answer as to why not. Because that's the law. That's the clear-cut law, is she's mentally unsound and you didn't report it. Can you tell me there's no other answer for that? You just forgot? Is that what it is?
Sure.
Okay. So we are now supposed to expect that you who forgot to make this extremely important step in keeping someone safe, such as Mr. Hill, in which, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he was assaulted by the defendant, Ms. Schultz, to which she was not reported to the government or any police, medical personnel. who is now assaulted by Ms. Schultz, we're supposed to expect that you can make that decision that she is mentally unsound, even though you can't remember that you have to report that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Defense, would you like to redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach the podium?
Proceed.
All right, Ms. Wood. As you left off with our prosecutor, in your medical opinion, you said that you declared Ms. Schultz mentally unsound. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And if she was left mentally unsound and you did not, could you have any reason why you did not report it?
I mean, possibly in fear of further abuse, even from her abuser, and even for her own safety.
And could you tell me a little bit more about her own safety in that way?
Yes. If she were to know that I reported it, she could have gotten scared and worried about her own, what she could do to other people, and I just didn't want to put that in her danger.
So in a way, you were protecting her from herself. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And when not telling a government official or a police officer, could you feel that that was the best situation possible, in your medical opinion?
I believe so.
Okay. And do you have children yourself, Miss Wood?
Yes.
Okay. When yelling at them or whenever trying to discipline them, do they back up, or do they back up out of fear?
No.
No. So could you tell me, if you could answer this, in your medical opinion, could you tell me maybe why not Mr. Hill did not back up and he was very forward about his posture?
He may have felt threatened by her, and so he wanted to assert dominance in a way.
And would you say dominance is a very high probability that could have threatened Ms. Schultz, in your medical opinion?
Yes.
Okay. And when first meeting her, did she tell you anything about her personal life other than the fact that she was domestically abused?
She told me a few other things about her life.
Could you tell me, like, what?
She told me about her children, and she told me about her loving family back at home and how she had a wonderful life with her husband before he started the abuse.
And you are a wife and mother yourself, is that correct?
Yes.
So in this situation, actually, let me rephrase that. Would your medical opinion, Ms. Wood, see to it that Ms. Schultz, you declared her medically unsound, is that correct again?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that she also you didn't report her. Could you tell me why you didn't report her again?
Objection repetitive.
Sustained.
Apologies, Your Honor. Your Honor, could I have a minute to coerce with my co-counsel?
Proceed. 1 minute only.
All right, Ms. Wood. And you'd do anything to protect your children?
Yes, anything.
Even if your children were there and you still had a self-defense response, would you have protected? Actually, let me rephrase that. Protecting your children would be in your best interest, is that correct?
Absolutely.
And to keep them safe, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
You may step down.
Yeah.
Defense, would you like to call another witness?
Yes, Your Honor. We would like to call Lucy Carmichael, witness number 4, Lucy Carmichael.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
You may sit.
Your Honor, may I approach the podium?
Proceed.
Hi, Ms. Carmichael. How are you today?
Good, how are you?
I'm very good. So could you tell me, in your perspective, what happened at the bar that day?
I was working at the bar. It had been a normal shift. Ryan Hill had come and sat at the bar, and Miss Schultz approached him, sat down next to him, ordered a drink of apple juice. I served it to her, and I had been busy with somebody else, but I seen that something had been knocked over, the juice had been knocked over. He stood up, and she backed up a bit, and then grabbed the bottle and smashed him over the head with it.
And did you set the bottle there yourself?
No, I do not recall setting the bottle down.
All right. You said you've seen this before, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And did Mr. Hill seem very dismissed from the situation?
Yes, he was to himself.
Mm-hmm. And was Miss Schultz, did she appear to you to be very friendly?
She was trying to start a conversation with him.
Okay. Are you married or do you have children yourself, Miss Carmichael?
I do.
Okay. Miss Carmichael, could you tell me a little bit more about your children?
Yes, I have a son and a daughter, 6 and 5. They're great kids. They're very relaxed.
And when disciplining them, do you raise your voice or ever stand forward to them as to assert dominance?
I've raised my voice. I don't think I've ever, tried to overstep them, but I definitely have raised my voice, to get them to listen to me.
Do your children ever back up or seem scared when you yell at them?
No, my children are not scared of me.
Okay. All right. Would you say that is out of a sign of respect and that they know that you love them even though?
Yes.
And Miss Carmichael, when serving drinks at the bar that day, do you know if Mr. Hill had any drinks that day?
No, he was currently looking at a menu.
Okay. And had you ever talked to him before or seen him at the bar before?
He had come in a couple times, but it wasn't a frequent thing.
And had you ever addressed Mr. Hill or talked to him?
I had talked to him when I was handing him his menu and just as a greeting.
And any previous meetings, have you served him a drink at all?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Has he explained to you the whereabouts of his day, where he was, or what he was doing that day before?
No, he was very to himself.
And Miss Carmichael, you said you have children, is that correct?
Yes.
And do you love your children?
I do.
Okay. And do your children respect and love you?
I hope they do.
Yes, of course. Would you protect your children even if they weren't behind you?
Of course.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Prosecution, would you like to cross-examine?
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach?
Proceed.
Ms. Carmichael, was it?
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned that you had seen Mr. Hill in the bar a few times, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did he ever seem angry or was he typically to himself, calm-tempered?
Very private.
Okay. So he never displayed any other signs of
No,
aggravation?
never.
Okay.
Not very friendly, but to himself.
Okay. So when you were giving your narrative to the defense here, you claimed that Mr. Hill stood up and Ms. Schultz stepped back. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So at any point, did you see Mr. Hill raise his fist?
No, he did not raise his fist.
Okay. Did he make a fist?
Yes, his fist.
He did make
He
a
had a
fist.
fist on the table and his hand by his side. I couldn't see the other hand, but he did get up and stand up.
You mentioned that you did raise your voice at your kids sometimes. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see that as a sign of aggression or just simple discipline?
It depends. It's a sign to show that I'm angry, that I'm upset with them.
Okay. And do you think that your kids ever feel that you're beyond angry with them, that you're going to hit them maybe when you raise your voice?
No, my
Okay.
kids know me.
So I'll ask again. In your general opinion, is raising your voice aggression towards your kids?
Aggression towards my kids?
Correct.
No, not towards my kids.
Okay, if it were a stranger,
Yes.
you would see that as aggression?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, may I have a moment?
Proceed. 1 minute only.
So you'd mentioned that you'd seen bar fights before, correct?
Yes.
Okay, had you ever seen a situation like this where it's a man talking to a woman or a woman talking to a man?
Yes.
Okay. And when Ms. Schultz approached Mr. Hill, while he seemed to be a little standoffish and not wanting to talk to her, did that seem a little odd to you? Maybe Ms. Schultz should have stepped back a little?
She definitely could have stopped the conversation.
You're saying she could have stopped the conversation? Okay. Do you think she could have done anything differently throughout the entire scenario?
No, she was
No?
being very friendly.
Okay. And that Mr. Hill not wanting to talk to her, that wouldn't have raised a signal to her that maybe this isn't the right conversation to be having?
If she did not reciprocate his lack of conversation, then I cannot answer that. That's on her.
Okay. You mentioned that you did see Mr. Hill make a fist, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and that hand was on the table?
Yes.
But at no point was it raised up towards Ms. Schultz or even pointed at her?
No, it was not.
Okay. And you would consider that aggression?
I'm sorry?
And you would consider that aggression?
His
Putting your
standing
fist
up
on.
and the way that he had stood up, it was very fast, very like on top of her. I would, and then he did speak to her. So it was,
Have you ever dropped a bottle at the bar?
I have.
Okay. And when you dropped the bottle, did you stand there and look at it, or were you surprised? Did you jump back a little?
I can't recall my reaction. It happens very randomly, but I would say that I probably looked at it and went to clean it up.
Okay. Do you spill drinks often?
I spilled it.
Okay. Do you see customers spill drinks often?
Yes.
And what's the typical reaction? If you had to give me just a basic, what usually happens?
Most of the time, people will look at the spill that they made and ask me to help give a napkin or something to clean it up.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Defense, would you like to redirect?
No, Your Honor.
You may step down. Defense, do you have any further witnesses you would like to call?
No, Your Honor.
The defense rests.
The defense rests. The defense rests.
Prosecution, are you ready to give your closing statement?
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach?
Proceed.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have given you quite the abundance of evidence tonight. Evidence that I assume that you will weigh proportionately with the crimes that have been brought upon Ms. Schultz. By taking into consideration all evidence presented to you today, it is remarkably clear that the defendant, Ms. Schultz, violently attacked Mr. Hill out of aggravated assault rather than self-defense. The defense has brought to you a theory today that is, to be quite frank, ridiculous. Backed up with no evidence, they are fabricating a lie to simply fool you. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, during your time of deliberation today, I ask to you on behalf of the state of Tennessee that you do return a verdict of guilty. Thank you. Prosecution rests, Your Honor.
Defense, are you ready for your closing statement?
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach the podium?
Proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we appreciate your patience here at the defense with my co-counsel, and I'm sure the prosecution does too. As this case has taken over 2 days to preside, and we are very appreciative of your patience. Today and yesterday, we have tried as the defense to prove Ms. Schultz innocent of all charges the prosecution is bringing. Today and yesterday, we called 2 witnesses, Elena Black, a single mother with 2 children, who has 2 children, and as a friend who has gone through this exact same pain and suffering my client went through last year. We also called Marissa Wood. Marissa Wood is a psychologist. Marissa Wood is a psychologist. She has given you her professional opinion to the best of her ability to try and prove to you her stance. We have also called Miss Lucy Carmichael. Miss Lucy Carmichael was the bartender at the bar that day. She also has given you a bunch of evidence to prove, loads of evidence to prove that she and Miss Schultz and Miss Marissa Wood and Miss Elena Black, all of these women have definitely given you enough evidence that the prosecution clearly does not see to prove to you that Miss Schultz is innocent of all charges. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the law states under Tennessee Code Section 39-13-102 that a person commits aggravated assault who intentionally or knowingly commits an assault that results in serious bodily injury to another, results in the death of another, involved the use or display of a deadly weapon, or involved strangulation or attempted strangulation. If you believe that the defendant has met this criteria, you shall find them guilty. If you believe they do not meet this criteria, you shall find them not guilty. Officer Strezoff, you may take the jury to the jury room.
Yes, sir. Make sure they have all the exhibits into evidence as well.
Guilty of aggravated assault because there's no reason for her to grab the bottle and smash Mr. Hill over the head just because he stood up because she spilled a drink on him.
I think his reaction was more like in shock.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he was more surprised than anything.
Because he wasn't paying attention, he was looking at the menu.
Yeah. I mean,
Take it wrong with the defense.
if anyone spilled a drink on you,
Nah, I
you're
gotta
gonna
go to the-
stand
You're gonna
up.
stand
Yeah.
whoa.
And it was her fault
Yeah.
anyways. Like,
Right,
he
but she
wasn't-
knocked it over.
Yeah, and he wasn't even trying to talk to her. Like, why are you
No.
still
Yeah,
talking?
like,
He was like ignoring her, and she just like
Like she
knocked
didn't
him
take the
with drink.
signal. Like she could have stopped after she found knew that he didn't want to talk, but she
Yeah.
just kept going. So she's like, if you get aggravated when someone's not wanting to talk to you, you're gonna get aggravated. But he didn't like do anything.
He just
like body
sat
language
there.
wasn't there.
Yeah.
Like he was just like,
And we couldn't see the other face, so like all we saw was that on the table.
right.
He had like short answers and stuff. Saying things.
Have conversation.
She just grabbed the bottle. Like the bottle was not necessary. She didn't need to defend herself.
Yeah, you could have been like,
Exactly.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you
My
could've
bad.
been,
Oh,
oh, I'm
yeah.
sorry. You could have apologized.
Instead of knocking the
maybe-
bottle on top of his head. Okay.
Anyone else? Or?
Then you like, do y'all agree that she's?
What you think? Guilty.
I'm not verbal because I'm
Guilty.
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 Everyone's here.
We all think guilty.
Oh,
Alright,
right.
Do we all think
everybody in
guilty?
this room.
Yeah, I think I
take
would.
Do we have like a vote or something? Or?
Yeah,
Yeah,
like,
you think she's guilty?
Raise your hand if you think she's guilty.
Okay. All three of you
Okay.
say she's.
So write it down somewhere and I'll hold it. And then I'll
Someone
give
have
it
a
to
paper?
Tanner.
I don't have a paper.
I mean, there's like
There's paper right here.
there's
It's
like-
like
rip a
Where?
piece. I don't
Right
know.
here.
It's like
Oh, yeah.
rip a piece off or something.
Wait, here.
I got you.
I have a clean one. I have a
I
clean
know
one.
you're a clean one.
I have a clean one. I
You're
have a clean
You're
one.
clean. It's right.
I don't have a pencil. Wait,
Here,
Right there.
here. Yeah.
Guilty on all charges?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, does
man.
You have to say,
I don't know why I said
the
yes.
jury thinks or something like the jury something.
Oh, lady.
The jury.
The members of the jury.
The
members of the jury
find
that-
Stephanie
Oh yeah,
Schultz
believe
Miss
that
Schultz
Miss Short
is
yeah.
guilty.
On all counts.
Yeah.
guilty for
Whatever you say. I'm the best. I don't got to say. But
Yeah.
Your hardest
You
job
should know.
ever.
You should know what it is though. You have the easiest job.
it's the hardest job. I'm standing here to make sure you're not doing anything bad. So that's pretty hard.
We haven't done anything. Like,
Yeah, like what would we do?
yeah, you got an easy 100. Like,
Yeah, I
we're
do.
sitting there.
Hey, I swear people in many times.
okay.
Oh, okay.
Congratulations.
That's really crazy, actually.
I mean, this is all you guys done. So like, I had more time, so mine was harder.
You don't write notes
So
on
it takes
it.
me.
That's really crazy.
Put it in like a.
Like fold it, yeah.
Yeah, you have to fold it.
Other way, other way.
No, you have to fold it closed and give it to the judge.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure. Sorry.
Yeah. No, I.
So you have to give it to the judge.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
And then I got
No, like
Yes, you give.
Do I show it to the judge?
Yeah,
The judge gives it back to me and I give it to Tanner because Tanner's supposed to read it out loud.
I'm pretty sure if you give it to the judge,
Yeah,
and
you
then
gotta
he'll
give
be
it
like,
to the
okay,
judge
fine.
and then the
Judge
judge
gives
will
it to
give
me.
And then
I
he'll
give
stand
it
up
to him.
and he'll say it,
Alright,
and then yeah.
Alright.
Okay, I think
Sweet.
we're ready.
We're just sitting here so it acts like we were like talking.
Yeah, like what are?
Do we go back?
We got it. One more minute. Yeah, we're just gonna go back.
Yeah.
Just 3 out of 10. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
I think it could go both ways. After
It
that,
could- I
after
think
what
it
you
could-
guys yesterday, I was like, oh, we're winning. And now I'm like, okay, let's go both ways.
Yeah.
We were trying to like.
I hope you know I pulled that out of my
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, have you come to a decision?
Yes, Your Honor. Members of the jury find Stephanie Schultz guilty on all accounts of aggravated assault.
Okay, now I wanna know why. Let's seal the deal. And your notes need to correspond with your decision.
Aren't I supposed to say that?
Yeah.
Yes, you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah. Oh. So he just says,
Hang on.
that they
Give him
found
the
the
paper.
verdict.
Give him the paper.
Give him the
Give him the
paper.
Give him the thingy.
Wait, what?
Give the thing.
We
Give
did
him
that
the-
in our class
Yeah.
too.
Give it to him.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you give it to him.
You'll deliver it to the judge.
That's what I said.
And then do the smack beat.
I was like, give it to the
I just want to see the smack.
Ladies and gentlemen, the court finds Ms. Stephanie Schultz guilty of aggravated assault against Mr. Ryan Hill. Court is adjourned. Dismissed.
The defense didn't provide much information or evidence.
Okay, enough information. What information would you have liked to see to come up with an alternative decision?
They could have proved a bit more,
A bit more about?
like provided more evidence.
Of what?
Prove her.
Someone's mad.
No, I'm not mad. No,
Okay, give me, hold on, give me an example of what would have done it for you in terms of evidence.
I don't know, just a bit more.
Okay, we come back to Abby, what do you got?
I wasn't here yesterday, so I didn't get to see the trial, but from what I could see, like, there just wasn't a lot of evidence proving Ms. Schultz not guilty.
Okay,
Can I say something to that?
all right, go ahead.
Because 95% of the stuff we entered into evidence was entered yesterday. Like, all of it.
Yeah.
But we also
Yeah,
mostly
but-
discarded all the.
That's also jury.
Okay, Demarian, what is your,
I feel like Mr. Hill wasn't really, he wasn't as to be like aggressive because his hand was on the table. So it wasn't like balled up like right here, like that he was about to strike, so.
okay, so based on the pictures you were looking at, that was your decision?
Yes.
Okay, Maddie,
I just feel like he wasn't being overly violent.
okay. Was there some line of questioning that also reaffirmed your position?
I don't know.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
I feel like the prosecution made like good points on like the part where they were like, why did you let her go out? When like they proved better points than this, and they proved like why she should be guilty. And like the body language that Mr. Hill was giving off was not accurate.
Okay, so then you're relying on the testimony and cross-examination of the doctor, the psychologist, that for you, you said, no, this is not falling in
Like
the
she
category.
could have done more to help her. So, like,
Okay.
she did that.
All right, what do you got?
I feel like all the evidence or whatever, Ms. Schultz kind of just like escalated the situation on her own because like Mr. Hill just kind of stood up and like the prosecution kind of just made it sound like she was guilty. Like, I don't know.
All right, Tanner, go ahead.
Mr. Powers, or SRO Powers said that, the glass bottle has been used as a weapon in previous aggravated assault cases when he was on the stand.
Okay, so it was a testimony of the SRO, law enforcement. Okay, Tori, what'd you,
When they were talking about body language, I couldn't really see like him being mad or upset with his body language and maybe seeing like aggression.
got it?
Yeah, with Mr. Hill's body language, like when he stood up, it was just like a reaction of the drink being spilled on him. You can look in the picture, his hand really wasn't closed, like clenched. It was more open. Just the way the picture was, it looked like it was closed. But he was just standing up, and Ms. Schultz reacted in a violent way that was not necessary.
Okay. Let me ask you this question as a jury. Do you think that, go ahead.
Well, it's for the jury. Who, like originally when you walked into the jury room, who thought she was innocent? Anyone?
Who thought she
No.
was guilty immediately after seeing the video? Who was the most biased? Raise your hand.
All of
So what was the arguments
Right,
about?
that was my
y'all
question.
said
Yeah,
y'all had?
you guys
we
did.
didn't. We didn't have any arguments. We all agreed.
Oh, okay.
We definitely.
There were like, there was so many arguments, I was like.
That was my question. I just want to see if anyone.
Okay, one thing.
We're trying to make you feel
False
good, Cameron.
Okay. One thing that the prosecution, this happens in real life, might have done, and actually SRO Powers brought this up. He said the prosecution should make a motion to suppress the evidence of that video, so it's never brought into the courtroom. If they had been successful on that, how would you have ruled? If you've never seen that video, what would your decision would have been the same? Would have been the same? Okay. All right, Judge, I want to get some feedback from you, and then I'm going to give you an introduction in terms of what's coming tomorrow and why I had to take that phone call. Okay, go ahead, give us your feedback.
I'd say both sides did great. I mean, one, prosecution, you really drove it in that when he stood up, he wasn't showing his fist. It wasn't an act of aggression, as you proved. But you were very good to back it up. So that's my feedback.
I think and then I'm going to ask you another question because you brought up some good points earlier when we were talking one-on-one. One thing I thought that was very good, Colin, when you did a demonstration of what he looked like, and I think you even asked the question, could it possibly have been he was leaning on the table and he was not getting ready to strike? And have you ever been in a situation you're kind of off balance and you're leaning on something? I thought that was a great thing to pull out. Now, the judge had some comments on things that you both missed. You want to talk about those and the objections?
Yeah, so the hardest part about this was trying not to butt in, because there were some parts that I was like, that should have been objected, and I could see it, and I was just looking at both sides waiting for it to be objected, and it wasn't. Like, there were like 3 or 4 times it could have been objection leading, objection
Question answered, I think you said.
asked and answered, and